All right, in this method, let's return back to multi-indexes, and I'll be introducing the stack method, which basically takes the columns at the top, you can call it the column axis or the column index, and moves that index to the main index, the one on the left, the horizontal one. Of course, this is a concept that is much easier seen in action than explained, so let's get right into it. I'm going to be introducing a new dataset for this lesson and the next couple ones, and it's called worldstats.csv. So let's call our readCSV method and import this worldstats file. And this is basically economic data, I think from the World Bank or some kind of other global organization. Basically has a column for the country, the year, as well as that country's population and their GDP. The economic statistics here are largely irrelevant, but we basically want to create a multi-index here and group it by the country and the year. So in order to do that, I'm going to use my index call parameter on my readCSV method. As a reminder, you can give this either a single string with a column name, and it's going to create an index with that column's values, or you can give it a list, which is what we want to do, and that's going to create a multi-index, multi-level index in our data frame. So I first want to have a country index and then a year level within my multi-index. So let's take a look at what this looks like. And there you have it. You're going to have country on the outside as the outer layer, and then you have the year, and then you have the statistics. So I'm going to store this in a variable called world, and let's preview the first three rows with the head method and an argument of 3. So there we have it. So as I mentioned, we're typically used to referring to the index as the stuff on the left here, this stuff in bold. Well, the columns technically constitute an index as well. They're basically the other index. They're the index in position 1. We use the term columns because it's much more common. It's a much more simpler way to describe it. But really an index is just kind of an identifier for a value in a table. And really the columns are an identifier for the specific column in which a value belongs. So this still constitutes an index. And all that the stack method does, I'm going to call it on my world data frame right below, but before I execute, I'll explain it again, is it basically takes the column-based index and moves it to be on the row-based index. So when I execute this, you'll see that population and GDP will move. So from here, these two values have moved right here. And of course, it's created those two values for every single value or combination of values in my existing multi-index. So because I need to store two rows now, one for the population and one for the GDP, I've effectively doubled the size of my data frame from a rows perspective because I now have twice as many rows. However, I've halved the number of columns I used to have from my original one. So I basically, doubled it in size one way and halved it in size the other way. So just kind of, again, shifting or pivoting how the data frame looks. We're not changing its content so much as we're just looking at it from a different angle. So the other thing that's happened here is, in addition to kind of migrating those values, we can see that the value of population here for the Arab world in 2015 is right here, Arab world 2015 population, and there's that number again. Similarly, the first GDP value, you can see it starts with 2.53, is listed right here on the GDP row, 2.53 for that combination of Arab world in 2015. But the big difference here is because Pandas is left with one column of data, it's converted our original data frame essentially to a Pandas series. It's kind of confusing to have a single column Pandas series with a 3-level multi-index, but that's really what it is. It's just one column of information, and in order to identify any value in that column, you just need to provide 3 values to the index. It's technically not a multi-column, multi-row data frame. It's not two-dimensional because in technical terms, you only have to provide one piece of information in order to access a value here. It's just unfortunate that that one piece of information has to be 3 pieces of information, which is the country, the year, and the actual statistic here, population or GDP that you want to pull. But in Pandas terms, it is technically a one-dimensional object because there's only one column of data. And I can prove that this is a series, by the way, by passing this resulting object into my type function in Python and getting that it is, in fact, a series. Now, if you don't like that design and you don't like the fact that it's being rendered as a series, there is a convenient series method called toFrame. It's going to be to_frame. And predictably what this method does is convert a series to a data frame. So if it's a multi-index series, it's going to keep the multi-index. You can see here that country and year and this column that we moved from, or this new index, this third layer that we moved from the columns, is still going to be present here. You can see that it's not going to have a name because it didn't have any name in the columns level. But you can see here that this is now going to be a data frame. We can tell by the more bold look. And also because we basically are left with no no name to describe the column that's now storing these values combined. Pandas has defaulted to the numeric index naming scheme, which is always numeric, and it has one column left over, so it's predictably going to get a 0 for the first position in that index. Of course, if you want to change that, it's as simple as just calling the rename method on the data frame and providing it that dictionary where you can specify, is it a dictionary? I think it is. Anyway, the rename method, there's definitely a lesson on it in this course, but you can call the rename method to change that 0 to whatever you'd like. But basically, to summarize, the stack method essentially pivots a level. It takes the columns and it stacks them, continues to stack them on the horizontal-based index. So that's the stack method, and in the next couple lessons, we'll explore the unstack method, which, as you might be able to predict, essentially does the process in reverse. It takes an outer layer of a multi-index and basically moves it to serve as the columns. So we'll take a look at that in the very next lesson.